Friends, you go live and StreamYard tells you you can't go live. You got too many hours saved on here as it is. You know what? Don't try to sell me right now, StreamYard. Anyways, we are the Cora Whores. We're a community for godless people, spiritual community for godless people. Don't laugh. And we're gonna get this money. Yeah, yeah. We're gonna get that Hollywood money. So, how much money do we need? Well, frankly, we need more money than God.
We built this hall with borrowed bills, wrote these songs on broken windowsills. Our altar's made of old tin foil, a godless church built on digital soil. But if the poor church mice who passed those plates woke up with a Robin Hoods in their face, we'd rob St. Peter right down to the floor. Woo! Finally make their God stand for something more. Oh, we'd fleece Mammon's coffers, their starving flock to feed, send them back to Jesus without their means. So those Judas steeples into unholy sod, at last we'd have more money than God. If Uncle Sam had their money, he could feed the folks they don't. The godly men get elected so that they won't. While they dance round the mountain with their golden calf, will cast their tablets down on Yahweh's behalf. When saints who pay to pray in their pews look to Cora or get some good news. Oh, we'd fleece Mammon's coffers, their starving flock to feed, send them back to Jesus without their means. So those Judas steeples into unholy sod, at last we'd have more money than God. Their golden gates won't let us in, nor the widows might redeem their sins. Grabbing images paint a hell so bold, but golden plates can't indulge their souls. With their 30 pieces of silver we'll escape their hell. If they try to stop us, we'll ring their bell. If they get up the nights on their graves, we'll trod. Finally have more money than God.
Woo woo! That's the way we do it. That's the way we do it. Welcome, Church of Cora Whore, to a different kind of worship setting. This is broadcasting live from the Sex Grotto. So, welcome to the Church of Cora Whore. Let's get weird. Y'all go into the room with the blindfolds. Don't ask no questions. All right. Now, today we are going to talk about Draw the Shape of Your Story. I should explain. I'm not going to. It's a cheap hotel in Utah County. Won't disclose where one can do. All right. So, and Winter and I escaped to it. Winter's off camera by choice, not so much choice. I have lovers. They are real. When I talk about Winter, he is real. All right. Well, he's real when I don't talk to him. I gotta laugh. Out of Winter. I was just telling Winter this morning that, I said, you're right. And he says, what? You're right. It was hard enough the first time. Don't. I told him it's like I'm screwing my own Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm actually with somebody who's smarter than me and is my mentor. And yeah, we just have sex with him. All right, so let's talk about your story. So this was created by, well, it wasn't created by. It was best illustrated and filmed so generations ahead of them could understand by Kurt Vonnegut, who was a novelist behind famously Slaughterhouse-Five. I say famously because that's what Wikipedia told me. I didn't think I realized that about him, that he wrote Slaughterhouse-Five, but that's interesting. That's an interesting fact. Man who had a very hard life, by the way, because life is hard. That's how it goes. And he told this story. If you want to make $1 million, and Church of Korihor definitely does, all of us Korihors out here obviously do, you can do it by selling this story to Hollywood. Hollywood will definitely buy it. I've written screenplays, so, and I'm not entirely certain he's right, but every movie I've seen, he was right about that. They say in Hollywood, those of you who have been Korihors for a while will know that my first failed career was making movies. This Atheist Preacher is my second failed career. I'm still working on it. And I have written screenplays. I haven't sold any for $1 million, but then I stupidly tried to produce my own movies and was selfish. I actually had a couple opportunities to sell screenplays, and damn, I should have done it. But I said, no, me and my buddy Paul are going to make the movie. Anyways, that was a bad move. Don't do that. Do this instead. Write a screenplay, sell it. There are screenplay contests you can enter into and make pretty decent money, actually. It usually costs about $25 to get in. Yeah, but if your screenplay is any good, it has a good chance of winning. And usually they have like sizable prizes. So let's learn how to write a screenplay. He would take a chalkboard, not unlike this one, and he would write 2 letters on it. He would famously say, you write a B for beginning, and over here you would put E for, obviously, electricity. Then draw a line from one to the other. And basically, this line is the line of goodness. Whatever you judge to be goodness. Above the line is, good kinky sex. Not now. And then underneath it is, trauma. Or above the line is, prosperity, and below the line is poverty. Whatever you're going to gauge is the quality of life. Above the line is good, below the line is bad. Now you start out, you draw a story. If you have a story where your hero starts out above the line and ends up above the line, that's nice for them, but a pretty bad story. This is just not interesting. Nobody wants to see that. So get rid of that. If you are below the line and end up below the line, that's depressing and mundane. Nobody wants to see that. I'm talking to some of you people in Hollywood. But of course, then you have some of the most famous examples. Started out below the line, somewhere below the line, and then pulled themselves out and ended up above the line somewhere, right? So that's a classic story arc. You start out, your condition's not great. You work yourself into a better position by the end. But that's still not terribly interesting. Doesn't make for a good 90-minute movie. And it's hard to sell popcorn and Coke like that. So, favorite example of a story is always man in a hole. Man in a hole, usually a man, actually a man, meaning cisgendered person. Starts out a little bit above the line, not fantastic, and then almost immediately something bad happens to him, and then he has to work his way out and work his way out and work his way out until in the end he ends up at least as good as he was, if not a little bit better. Man in a hole, right? Now, great way to accomplish this kind of thing is to use the most overused trope in the world, but some of your favorite movies have used it, and that is something called a MacGuffin. A MacGuffin is a talisman, a ring, anything that comes into your experience, into the protagonist's experience, that he has to deliver to headquarters to win the day, make mom proud, get the girl, etc. Great example of a MacGuffin is Dumb and Dumber, right? Lloyd gets a suitcase from the pretty girl who left it in his limousine, and he is, but up until that point, he's a loser, but he's above the line because he's born with a penis, and that's great. And then though he lives in a society that prefers people with penises and gives them preference and things, and so the fact that he is a loser in life doesn't bother him. He's cool with it. It's fine. He'll do all right. And so, but then this girl comes into his life. He realizes pretty women exist and thinks he has a shot with her. Doesn't know she's an undercover government agent. Spoiler alert. And she has a suitcase full of money, which he doesn't open. And that Samsonite, those of you who know, if you know, you know, Samsonite, I was way off, is going to go to Aspen. He knows she's flying to Aspen. And so he and Harry decide to go to Aspen and deliver the suitcase that he doesn't open. It's a code among limo drivers. And then on the way, it breaks open. They just it's full of money. They replace the money with IOUs, pretty much all it, as they spend all the money and track the girl down. And he turns out okay in the end. I don't even remember how it ends, if he gets the girl or not. But he goes back to just the life he had before, where he and Harry were just losers. So at least get back to where they were. So you're in the hole, get back out of the hole. Man in a hole. MacGuffin. Now you know. Now, let's try one more. Let's try a couple. No, let's just try. This is, as Kurt Vonnegut would say, this is his favorite kind of story. Going from B for beginning to E for electricity. The best kind of story in the world is a Cinderella story. And a Cinderella story is it's pretty classic. Of course, there are multiple versions of the Cinderella story. But as Kurt Vonnegut explains, you start out below the line because your protagonist is born a girl, and not just a girl, but she is born without. She's born. She has a mother, and it's one thing if she never had a mother, but no, her mother dies, so she's very well below the line. Not only does her mother die, but her father is bewitched by an ugly bitch. So now she has this wicked stepmother who has two clones of her who treat Cinderella like shit. So Cinderella starts here. Okay? So this is the Cinderella story. Oh, by the way, the other example of a MacGuffin, just so we don't leave poor MacGuffin with just Dumb and Dumber as the example, is Star Wars, right? In Star Wars, R2-D2 comes into Luke Skywalker's existence. He's chugging along. He's not great, but he's fine. He's a boy who, has his uncle and his aunt and thinks his father is died some kind of hero, doesn't know. Spoiler alert. That spoiler we're not going to spoil. But, he's doing okay. Then this droid comes into his life, makes him aware there are pretty girls, and doesn't know that pretty girl. Definitely not spoiling that one. Those of you who haven't seen Star Wars, get on it. In any event, R2-D2 has the plans to the Death Star in his memory banks. That's why they have to get him to Alderaan. And Luke, destroys the Death Star, saves the day, gets the girl. Kind of, not really. That turns out for the best. Anyways, so Cinderella, she starts off really bad. And she's chugging along, and everything's just bad. Just day to day, everything about her story is bad. But then, of course, as we all know, there appears a fairy godmother, and she gets a new pair of shoes. Now, you have a fairy godmother shows up and gives you a nice pair of shoes. Your life is all right. I mean, you may be a slave, but I mean, you got like, your mom's still dead, but you got nice shoes, right? Then she gets a ball gown. Fucking what? Get out of here. And she gets to go to the ball. Boom. Our protagonist got over the line. Then you go and you take that and even further, she dances with the handsome prince. Oh my gosh. All of her dreams, everything comes true for Cinderella with the exception of your mom's still dead. But if your mom's going to be dead, and to have nice shoes and you have a nice ball gown and you dance with the handsome prince and he likes you, I mean, you did good. You done good, Cinderella. And then what happens? Bong, 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 all the way back down. No, I love Kurt Vonnegut's explanation. He says, no, never back down to where she was because she will always have the memory of that. Oh, she'll always have that. Unfortunately, lost one of the shoes, and half of a pair of shoes is pretty much the same as no shoes. So life sucks, but it doesn't suck as bad as it was, and that's Cinderella's story for the rest of her life. No, as you all know, that's not how it is. What happens is that the handsome prince shows up on her doorstep and he's got the shit she left at his place on accident. And she achieves off-scale happiness. A lesson for the ages. It's called the Cinderella story for that reason. Okay. Now, let's talk about the story of our lives. See, because a long time ago, some Greeks were thinking. And these Greeks, they were thinking about light. They didn't use beginning in electricity. In fact, they didn't really use this. And those of you who have taken philosophy 101, you've heard most of the story already, maybe all of it. And so you had, for example, you have the hedonists. The hedonists, their idea is, there's good and there's bad sides of the line. And the objective in life is to achieve as much good as you can. Wherever you are, whatever side of the line, spend as much of your life as possible above the line and somewhere above the line and as far above the line as you can until eventually you die. Hedonism, right? So hedonism is reduce pain, maximize pleasure, maximize the good. Now the Stoics come along to say, no, that's wrong. Because wherever you are, whenever you're making a decision about your life, whenever you are judging your life, I'm just switching over to StreamYard to make sure that I'm still broadcasting. Hello, Mary. How's it going in Scotland? Is it a nice summer in Scotland? Send me a ticket. I'm coming over. And so the Stoics point out wherever you are on the line in your story, you are there now. So it's just not useful to you to go on making decisions, trying to judge your life by the wholeness of your life, because whatever your past is, you can't change it. Whatever is in the future, you don't know. You are just making a decision for right now. So this hedonism thing, trying to fill your life as if it makes a difference how much of your life you have previously spent in the past above the line, really doesn't make much sense. Especially because, and the Stoics were smarter than they realized with this, because neuroscience can confirm this pretty much. Really, pain that you perceive is nearly as bad or as bad as pain that you are experiencing. So when you are looking to the future and worried and worried and worried and worried about it, even if your condition is above the line up here, because you're worried about the future, you are down here. And the more you worry about it, the more you stress out about it, the further down you are and the more pain that you are in, even though if you were to look at your situation, you're fine. Computers, don't do this. All right, and you're fine, but your pain is your perception of the future and your concern and worry about the future, that's that's just making everything worse, even though your condition is good. Same with guilt or shame about your past and where you come from. You spend your days dwelling on you didn't do this and you could have done that and you do this. There's a great line of which is it Slip Sliding Away by Paul Simon, right? Yeah. And he says, oh, how does it go? I know a woman, she was blah blah blah. She said a good day. Oh yeah, there you go. She said a good day ain't got no meaning. She said a bad day is when I lie in bed and think of things that might have been. Shit. Boy, isn't that the truth? Woof. That's the worst. That'll put you way down on the line, right? Way beneath the line. So the idea of the Stoics is this: wherever you are in life, when you start out, everybody thinks you start out above the line because you're born alive. Apparently, that means something. And the idea here is not only to get from birth to death with as minimal pain as possible, but to not even get too much pleasure, because the higher you go, the harder you fall. Even if you get back to where you were, now you're always going to look back on that moment and say, oh, it was so good. It was so good back then. That was the best bakery I ever had. Now no bakery will ever compare. I looked at Winter for that. He liked it. He liked it. Right? So try never to have too bad of pain. Try never to have too good of pleasure. Don't have too much kinky sex. Don't do, and wherever you are in life, just try to keep and maintain as level as you can. And how do you do that in every moment, though, of your life, as the days you look into the moments of your life right here? Well, the idea of the Stoics is you have to you have to mediate risk, right? Take the things, and the thing that they were really wise about, and the Buddhists were really the ones who I think pioneered this, and really, as far as I am aware, came up with the best of this, the Buddha Gupta or what have you, was that the more you worry about the future, particularly the anxieties you experience about the future, that you don't know what's going to happen, you experience it like it's all happening to you at once. Only one of those, one of those bad things, bad paths of the future that you're worried about is actually going to happen. But because you're worried about all the different ones that could happen, all the pressure and anxiety is building up on you for all of them, and that's ridiculous. So the idea of the Stoics, even today, modern Stoics will tell you, you take the thing that is most risky in your life, the thing that is most likely to happen, that is bad for you, and you just mediate against it. You just find a way to try and steer away from it. Then once you have successfully mediated that risk, you take the next risk and you try to mediate that, and you go down the list. One of these bad things is going to happen to you, but at least if you can take the worst thing that's most likely to happen to you and mediate it, then you at least have gained some control of your future and of your life. But of course, the problem with that, it doesn't do a lot to resolve, first of all, anything in your past, the trauma, the difficulty, the shame, the guilt, whatever it is. As far as that's concerned, basically you just have to let it go somehow. And that is so much easier said than done. The other problem with Stoicism is that the reality of our lives is that the worst things that happen to you in life tend to be shit you never saw coming. It's like out of nowhere, where you look at your life and go, what? Like, the fuck? Like, what just happened here? Right? These are this is what our life is like, right? This is what things tend to look like. So instead, we have, we're going to skip straight to the important one, and that is pessimism. Yeah, yeah. Pessimism is definitely the way, friends. Now, in pessimism, it's very much like stoicism in that you have to realize that anxiety about the future is mostly worrying about things that aren't going to happen. And anxieties about the past is just worrying about things that from wherever you are on your point in the line that you can't change now. So it's kind of you're mounting up anxiety on yourself that you don't need to. So to tell yourself that you're not going to worry about the future is really pretty impractical, but it would be ideal. And to tell yourself that whatever's in your past, you're just going to let it go. Well, that would also be ideal, but it's much easier said than done. So we need a fresher perspective, is what the pessimists argue. So the fresher perspective starts like this. No matter where you start in life, you were born alive. And being born alive is pretty much the worst thing that could happen to you. Okay, now we're starting out. At least they're starting out at something maintainable. Because if you were born alive, eventually you are going to die. And if you are going to be alive, presumably, best case scenario, for a long time, Arthur Schopenhauer is the most famous pessimist, I think, probably. And he strongly advocated for the right of people to just bail on life at any point. And it's like, you know what? If this life isn't working out for you, and there is no God and there is no hell, you might as well just end it and do what you have to do. Whenever you have a philosopher who says something like that, of course, the thing you're going to ask is, how long did he live? The answer is for Arthur Schopenhauer, who was born to wealth and privilege and hated it, but didn't know how to live poor, so he couldn't give it up. Is that he lived a life of wealth and privilege for 70 something years, and pretty much his whole life was above the line. Now, he wasn't quite a hedonist, but he did kind of live like one because over the course of his life, some of the favorite things he liked to do from the time he was young was to get parties and soirees together where they would drink and have wild sex and do wild stuff and then come crashing back down. And but they were still kids born to privilege, so I mean they're pretty much above the line no matter what they do. And then they would just organize these soirees and and to the point where his mother once wrote him a letter saying that she was so, this was in his early 20s, his mother wrote to him a letter basically saying, we keep the same company, and I am ashamed whenever I hear about you. You are disgusting. The things you do are repulsive, and I am ashamed to call you my son. And we're always finding ourselves in the company of the same people. And I'm ashamed to even know who you are. And he wrote back to her and suggested, well, maybe this relationship between you and I doesn't exist anymore, and you can tell people that I'm a stranger. And she's like, that's fine. They actually made up later, and she, apologized to him. But in any event, that was Arthur Schopenhauer's life. But he basically lived in the moment. He didn't want to remember his past, so he drank, or he'd go, or he would, he would live a hedonistic lifestyle. He would maximize his pleasure to the point where he could just numb the pain. And that's the way many of us live our lives wherever we are, above or below the line. But the way he wrote about it, so that it applies to everybody, is basically like this: you're born, even if you are slightly above the line, and by the time you die, you will have gotten old. In the best case scenario, and being old sucks. And then you die. And basically, the long line of our life is this: You're born, bad situation, and then you endure worse and worse situations until you die. Now, of course, along the way, we try to maintain above the line as best we can. You have good pastries. You get married to someone you love. Love is definitely the best thing that there can be in life. You get your heart broken. That's pretty bad. And then you try to tell yourself that you didn't need love. All you need is knitting. Then you discover that knitting doesn't do it for you anymore. Food doesn't do it for you anymore. Shit, I think I have depression. Then you get on meds, and you're back above the line. Maybe, maybe not, but at least you're not, dropping down quite as badly and as consistently anymore. But it makes it harder to orgasm, so that sucks. And then you discover that you could do harder drugs or something, whatever it is. But the general log line of your life looks maybe something like that. Life is going to get continually worse until it ends, but you just try to get as much pleasure out of it as you can while you can, and tell yourself, don't worry about the past, don't worry about the future. Everything's going to get worse. Just accept that and try to live your life as if something matters. Now, I'll tell you this story. So, I've done a lot of thinking this week. And as you guys know, I recently did a broadcast with Kate Kendrick of a Nevermo and an Exmo and an Nevermo Walk Into a Bar podcast. And I said something kind of interesting that's got me set on a thinker. I had said that, you know, um, we're trying to live, we're trying to a life that's worth living by basically, how did I put it? No, I don't remember. Point is this. I started to think a lot about this very wise saying. This is a wise saying. It's not from Schopenhauer. It's from another philosopher. You guys have heard me quote before. I'm going to tell you who it is at the end. And he says, "Quote: I'm not going to tell you who it is. He said this, Mr. Data. It is possible to make no mistakes and still lose. That is not an anomaly. That is life. And keep you in suspense no longer." It was Captain Picard who said it. And I was thinking a lot about that this week as I suffered an awful lot of losses in my life. As I looked around at myself and thought, I'm really, really tanking hard here on some of these problems I have going for me. And thinking about the future. You see, the thing I love about Schopenhauer is that when he advocates for suicide and calls it the most basic right that there is, his explanation is basically to try and tell yourself and remind yourself, if you're here, if you've accepted that, you could bail on this world at any point in time, and it would be fine for you, because non-existent things don't experience anything. He said the thing that empowers you and at the same time challenges you is to say you haven't done it. Many of us in the world, it's disturbing as adults to realize that most people in life, many people in life that you meet, would if they thought they could. But they're afraid it will hurt, or they were more likely afraid that their loved ones will be so stricken with grief they won't be able to recover. And so most people who are depressed, while human society will tell us that they are selfish, mainly live with live altruistically. In other words, they live in the interest of other people. They survive. They go on because of people that they love. And when you live a life like that, where you are living mainly in the interest of other people, it's not only difficult to say that that person is selfish, but more importantly, you have to ask, why do we do it? Why do we do anything in the interest of other people? Why do we carry on at all? The fact is that the only thing that makes any of it seem rational at all, in my opinion, is love. It has to be that you are not just in love with something or with someone, excuse me, but with something. Something about your life has to make you go, even if I were to fail at this, I would do it. And it can't be to build a life that you're going to be proud of after you die. You don't exist after you die. Hopefully. Ugh. But it's what you need now in the moment. That if you were to draw the story of your life as if you would be impressed by it, you would draw a story that says he failed at this again and again. But it's all right, Lisa. You're good. Hope you're doing well, Lisa. Sorry about you've had some troubles. We all do. But yeah. Um, that your life, if you were living a life that you would choose for yourself, it has to be one where you don't focus on whether you will succeed or whether you will fail. But if you were to fail, even if you were to fail, this is the thing you would fail at. Motivational speakers like to say that, you must think about what would you do if you thought you could not fail? If you knew that you could not fail, what would you do? And that's how they get you to buy more seminars, spend ridiculous amounts of money on their seminars, buy their books, call yourself a whatever, and try to live this optimal life and go out there and go get it. Don't let anybody hold you back. Don't let anything get you down, because you are going to succeed. I'm out here on the corner with pessimism, saying, you should probably just expect to fail. You're not that great. You're not that special. Things are usually pretty rough for everybody, and everyone dies in the end. So don't worry about it. But the question then, I would say, is this: even if you were to personally fail, what would you spend your life doing? For me, I look at my life and I often think, I will probably fail at all the things I'm doing. But when I am gone, my kids will know that I love them. That's always the first thing. And I think to myself, every time that I have to make a hard choice in life, or even when I just have to endure the temporary setbacks in my life, I think, as long as my kids know that I love them and that I sacrificed as much as I could for them, then I'm doing something worthwhile. Which, of course, always makes me remember that I am a role model to these children, which means that if I'm doing the best I can for them, they need to see me take my meds. They need to see me. They need to see me be vulnerable. That one was one I wasn't ready for, because I grew up with a dad who was impervious to all setbacks, and so my role model of being a man and being a father is you don't have problems. You have temporary setbacks. There's what's her name, Tomlinson. She has that line where she took, what's her name?
Lily.
Lily. And she And she talks about, she's like, I told my dad I had depression, and he told me you should eat peanut butter because it's got protein in it, and you go take a long walk, and so that nobody sees what happens. And she realizes this is what's been happening my whole life. This man has been white knuckling my whole life, and I had no idea. That's I often think about that. She's wise beyond her years. And she said, is that your kids have to see you be vulnerable. Your kids have to see you cry. Your kids need to know that life for you wasn't easy, and you weren't impervious to, you weren't invincible. You weren't impervious to setbacks. You had troubles too, so that when you are gone, however that happens, they will be able to look back and say, I'm vulnerable, but even the people that were my role models in life were vulnerable. And there's a virtue in being strong enough to show other people that you are vulnerable and to be able to ask for help. And so all of a sudden, while there's no requirement in life generally to do things exactly right, like learning how to ask for help, problem for me, you don't have to do it. You can make it through your life never doing it. And you can say, it's all right. It's only happening to me. I don't care. But when you have kids, that's not true. And when you have other people, you have students, or you have, nieces and nephews, or you have somebody in life who looks up to you and makes you into a role model, suddenly it increases the stakes. You have to live a life that you would want for them. And when I was talking to Kate, this is, I thought I remembered what it was that I had said, now I lost it again. Yeah, I lost it. But anyways, that's the point, is that life, if you're looking at the rest of your life, what would you do if you knew you would probably fail? What would you fail at? And how would your story look? So the ideal storyline should actually, in our minds, look something like this. First of all, the first thing to remember, there is no line. The line is in your mind. This is the problem. And you don't know where the end of the line is. You don't know because death can take you at any time. It's not just that you could fail at any time. You can get hit by a drunk driver at any time. You can get cancer at any time. You could get any kind of thing. You don't know where the line ends. And you don't know where the line between good and bad is at any particular time. And this is why the Buddhists meditate. Taught us a pretty important lesson out of this, actually, which is that wherever you are in life, that is the now. That is where you are. And if you are spending your life always thinking about how bad the past was, that's just mounting up pressure on you. And even if your past isn't bad, perhaps even worse, let's turn to Stoics, your life was good and now it's bad. And then you spend your life thinking about that and letting the pressure build up on how you have failed, how you have failed, how you have failed, how you have failed. It's only going to get worse and worse. And if letting that all mount up on you right now is just not helping you, and you can't do anything with it. But that past is as real as your anxiety. Out here in space-time, what happened in the past has already happened. Not only can you not do anything to change it, but it really doesn't actually exist in a way, unless everything in time and space is just a loop. That's way too complicated. We're not getting into that today. But it doesn't exist anymore. The only thing about that past that exists is what you are carrying right now. And so the Buddhists taught us to meditate. And they're the first ones. They aren't the only ones. So the first ones. Sorry. You remember to get eye check to make sure that's not an emergency. Okay. Sorry. You have to be able to drop it. Live in the now. Take a moment and let that shit go. Learn to live closer to now and let those thoughts that arise, just observe them, those memories. Observe them, let them occur, and instead of resisting them, fighting them, let them go. Just let them go on their way and dissolve back to the now. The less you let the past, the shorter the line of the past that you let bother you in the moment, the more you release the pressure. When people, I always find it interesting if people talk about meditation and they say, yeah, meditation is good for you. You need to learn how to relax. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's not an unfair point, but anybody who's done meditation knows sometimes meditation's very energizing, actually. It actually kind of gives you a little bit of strength, a little bit of pep in your step. It's really not so much relaxing, at least not for me. It's more about dissolving. It's more about letting that go. But of course, the past, that's one side of it. But then the future anxiety is the other one. Is the real, for me, I think it's probably the most difficult thing, because this is what the Stoics are right about. If you're looking at your life and your future in terms of what's going to happen, the first thing you have to admit and acknowledge is that you don't know what's going to happen. You have all of these directions that your life could go, and all of them involve you could die in any of these timelines in a moment that you don't know. And even if it's a moment that you will know when it happens, you can't tell right now exactly what's going to happen. And so that's why the future it fills us with so much anxiety, is because we let pressure mount up on us for what we are doing wrong. And I was watching this week, I don't know if you guys saw this, but on Soul Boom with Rainn Wilson, of course, famously Dwight from The Office, our good friend Britt Hartley was on, and she talks about the four crises that Rollo May discusses. So if you remember, a few weeks ago, I did a sermon about the amazing work of Rollo May and his four crises that every person must go through in life. And one of the early ones is freedom. And Rainn says to her, and he interviews a lot of very spiritual people. I mean, Soul Boom's all about spirituality, right? And he's like, that freedom is a problem, is a crisis. He said, I'd never heard that before. I was surprised. I thought, wow, he interviews all these intelligent people. He reads all these books. Never heard about this. And she explains it rather beautifully. It's like, the thing about freedom is that if you know in the moment you are free to choose, and you stress out about the future, the thing that really can mount up the pressure on you is to realize that you are responsible with your choices. You will have to live with the consequences of all your choices in the future. And that is too hard. It's too hard. You can't dwell on that. So what do? Well, according to the Buddhists, you meditate and return back to the now. Again, cut all that shit off if you can. And let those worries, just like thoughts about the past, these pains and the pressure in the future, about the future that are happening to you right now, they're only existing in the now because you're worried about them. Otherwise, whatever's happening in the future, first of all, most of these futures, again, are never going to happen. Let's say this right here is the timeline that's actually going to happen, and it's bad, and it ends in tragedy. And even if that's the case, you're experiencing all of the pressure and anxiety for all of these futures that aren't going to happen, and you're doing it for nothing. It's not benefiting you at all. And so to experience all of that at the same time is too much pressure. And so basically the idea is accept the fact that if your life is going to be filled with tragedy and pain, and then end in a fireball disaster over here, well, then that's what happens to you, right? That's one of my favorite things. Like, well, I guess that's what happens to me, right? Is to accept that that's going to happen, and worrying about all of this shit that's not going to happen, it doesn't make sense. Even that one, you don't know which one that's the future that's ahead of you. So really, worrying about that one's not helping you either, because you're probably trying to mitigate some other disaster you think is going to be the most likely thing that's going to happen, and you're wrong. And it's not impossible to see that that you could get it all wrong. You could make no mistakes and still lose. Thank you, Captain Picard. Whoops. I undid. I undid my undo. There we go. All right. So this is what I say what I mean when I say we need to transform painful lives into lives worth living. We must be in the now. This is our moment in life. This is our one chance. We know we will go into the future, and we know that it will be hard, and that, if we're lucky and do everything right, we'll get old before we die, and then we will die. In that time period, the question is this box right here. Even if you were failing, would you fail at feeding people who are poor, or who are unhoused, or who can't draw with a mouse? Yes, feed me. Feed me. Would you feed people? Would you teach people? Would you amuse and distract people? Would you make people laugh? What would you do with this time if you knew you were going to fail? That's generally in life. But you would have somebody like yourself, if you were an observer of your life from the outside, if you were the audience of your life, to say, this ends in tragedy, but look how worthwhile it was while they were failing. That's a life with a lot less anxiety, because you can accept, I may fail, but I'm failing at something that's worthwhile. Maybe somebody will be able to look at what I did during this time and say, at least if you were going to fail, you might as well fail at something like that, something that makes you feel like life is noble. Your life is noble in a way. I was on a date with with a woman a few years ago, and I looked at that. I said that to her. I said, I don't know, this seems like a very noble goal for you. And she looked at me and she went like I'm like, okay, I use antiquated words, and that's fine. That's fine. But that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you were going to fail at something, that would be the kind of thing you would want to fail at, because at least it was worth your while. At least it was a worthwhile thing to do with your time. And if you were to look at you in this moment and say, what are you doing right now? The answer would be, I'm doing something that makes me proud of myself. Guys, you guys remember my first Godless sermon, We're Going Home, where I talked about Apollo 13. Talked about it, I think, maybe more sermons than not at this point. I love that story because it's about a disaster that they pulled out of using the genius and ingenuity of some really brilliant people, of human beings, and a whole team of brilliant human beings, and came up with practical solutions. And that's what we're trying to do at the Church of Core. We're trying to come up with practical, everyday ways that we can organize individual people spread across the world and across the internet and come together to create better lives for people who are in pain like us. And if we can do that every day, there's no way to say that the story of our lives is ultimately failure. You know, I played it, and I played a song. I made a song called "We're Going Home" for that. But I'm not gonna. I have it loaded here. I'm not gonna play that one because now I've had an inspiration. I've had a vision. I don't know how many of you know about this, but this song right here caused a schism in the church before. Not really a schism. Hopefully you guys can hear me still because I have this loaded up here. Hold on. Okay. I'll tell you about this song right here. The day after I gave that Wednesday service / podcast introducing a new podcast series called Non-Zero Chance about the fact that I think we need a mission where we potentially could get somebody who has significant means, and I used Richard Branson as an example, to donate for a nice tax write-off to the Church of Korihor, which is a tax-exempt organization. I mean, some people think it's my hobby and YouTube channel. It's much more than that. You go to korihor.org, you find out we're an organization. We have a tax letter from the Internal Revenue Service. If you donated $1 million to the Church of Korihor, you could write it off. And I said we should start a mission to deflect 2024 YR4. YR4? Yeah. Which is an asteroid about the size of an 11-story building that has a non-zero chance. It's about 3%. A non-zero chance of hitting Earth on December 22nd, 2032. And was discovered the same month that the Church of Korihor was created. And the complaints started, and I said, we know how to do it because NASA did it with the DART mission. It took a machine about the size of a vending machine or maybe a refrigerator. They took this probe up into space and accelerated it to about 140,000 miles per hour, I believe, and smacked it into an asteroid. This is a game changer. So check. Fuck this news. Stop it. And they smacked it into an asteroid fast enough that it knocked material off of it, trying to deflect it, and at the same time redistributing, basically causing a ripple of the material around it enough that it changed the shape of the asteroid so that it would deter its trajectory. Now that asteroid wasn't heading towards Earth at the time. They didn't know that they could have hit 2024 YR4 and taken its non-zero chance and move it to zero. And so I said, we ought to create a mission just so that somebody, some generous billionaire soul, or a lot of somebodies could give enough money to launch a DART mission. And when we partner with the right people, maybe we partner with NASA, because I don't know if you guys know this, the current administrator of NASA is Sean Duffy. I don't want to say anything about who put him in that position. You know who put him in that position. Sean Duffy, if you don't know, became famous for the fact that he was a contestant on MTV's what was it called? The Real World Boston, and then Road Rules. That was the start of this man's career. Now, at some point, he also became Attorney General of Wyoming. So you'll always have that, Sean. And he became a congressman. But everybody knows him because he was on the Real World in the 90s. And now he's the administrator of NASA. We live in the upside down. At the same time that happened, NASA is literally losing more of its staff to budget cuts than I think at any point in recorded history. It is, yeah, that's fair. They've basically cut their budget in half with this big, beautiful bill. And one of the programs that they got rid of is the one that tracks near Earth objects like 2024 YR4. And they increased the budget a little bit to deflecting to a project to deflect asteroids. And some of you saw the movie Don't Look Up. There's an organization from NASA, it's like Planetary Defense, that exists. It's real. And their budget is increased. But if the system goes down and loses funding that allows us to track for near Earth objects, we may not know how close we are to 2024 YR4 hitting us. And I said then, I maintain now. I think that the truth of the matter is governments and billionaires basically have largely convinced themselves that if the asteroid doesn't hit us, is 97% chance it won't hit us at all. But in that 3% chance that it will hit Earth, they won't care. They don't care as long as it doesn't hit anything that affects them directly. And this is kind of our life. It tends to be. You get your heart broken. Anybody who's had their heart broken knows that moment will arrive when you look around and you say, I'll never love again. I finally came back to me. Said to Kate, I wish I didn't. And I said, when I started the Church of Korihor, I didn't think I would be doing this. I am going to have to teach and inspire and organize as best I can people to feel again. Because anybody who knows what it's like to have your heart broken knows that that healing from that heartbreak is going to require forgiveness, not strictly forgiveness of the person who broke your heart. You can go on your whole life never forgiving that person. But you have to forgive yourself for having fallen in love. And you have to tell yourself, there's nothing wrong, there's nothing immoral with having fallen in love. And that's the only way you're ever going to learn to love again. And if you don't learn to love again, you can live your whole life being lonely. But staying above that line without love is pretty difficult to do. Even if you just love cats, or even if you just love your dog, or even if you just love knitting, or even if you just love drawing or painting. You have to have love in your life. You must learn to fall in love again, or else your life truly may never be worth living. And I think that's what Schopenhauer was getting at. He said, your most natural right is to say, if I'll never experience love again, I can just bail. And so that's why I said the problem here is that if you get your heart broken by a person, You can forgive that person, or you can forgive yourself and carry on and learn to love again. What do you do if God breaks your heart? And that God could be something that has a strict dogmatic theology involved in it. Or it could just be believing that good things happen to good people, or that even if your life is bad, it gets justified in the end because you can be saved and go to heaven. What do you do when that God turns out not to be real? How do you forgive a God that's not real? Really, what we're talking about is, how do you forgive life when life breaks your heart? The expectations of life will break your heart. And you have to learn to love again, or else you will spend your whole life where things just keep getting worse and worse, simply because, not because life is shit or life sucks, but because you are spending your whole life setting up the expectation that you are definitely going to fail, and that nobody will love you, and nobody deserves, and that you don't deserve to be loved. And you become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Again, that Lily Tomlinson taught us about that. Huh? Taylor Tomlinson. That's right. I I was thinking that too. I said, is that right? I think it was Lily Tomlin. Taylor. That's right. Taylor Tomlinson. Good call. How many clips from her have we sent to each other over the years? Sorry, Taylor Tomlinson. It was Taylor. Sorry. I remember when she was talking about, she's like, you may be a bit, her therapist told her, you may be a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And she says, ew, no, that's a bad thing. It means that you're so anxious about your becoming this thing that you just find a way to make it happen. This disaster, you find a way to make it happen. And she says, well, can you say I have self-fulfilling prophecy? Does what is it she say? Oh, does Selena Gomez have self-fulfilling prophecy? That's how she convinced her that it's okay she has depression. No, Selena Gomez has depression. And so we have to, we have to be able to learn how to feel again over the course of a life where we've had our heart broken again and again, not just in love for each other or love for other people, but in our love for ourselves. You can get heartbroken. In your love of life, you can get heartbroken. And certainly if you spent your life in religion that tells you how bad you are for showing your shoulders, which now Mormons are allowed to do because life is fair. Right? And so you can spend your whole life having expectations set up for you about how awful you are and how awful life can be, how grateful you ought to be for the organization that allows you to be saved forever and to go to heaven. And you can spend your whole life in that circumstance and then tell yourself, now that I know that then that is true, I've lost all meaning because nothing in my life has purpose or sense anymore. But really, that's not true. Really, you're here flashing in the dark. You have this brief moment in the cosmic calendar, in this species that can actually change the world. We have taken this world as a species and we have made it harder for other beings to survive and to flourish. And it was hard enough, but we take resources that in the moment we want for ourselves, and we stupidly and selfishly forget to think about the future, or try not to think about the future impact of what we do, or we just don't know what the future impact of what we do. And so we're here causing real change in a small fragile world in the cosmos that is the only one we know for sure to have life currently. And we could be doing better. That's the anxiety that is worth feeling. We could change things. Now, what is the chance that the little Church of Korihor will actually raise 300 and something million dollars to launch a mission to knock 2024 YR4 off course and save the world? It's not 100%. It's a lot less. It may be only 3%. But that's about the kind of odds we like, because there's a 3% chance that this rock will hit us on December 22nd, 2032, and cause who knows how much damage. So it's worth a try. It's worth saying, look, we've got it. And so I launched a podcast series, or I'm working on a podcast series talking about, let's just talk about what it would look like. What does it actually look like for us to decide if NASA's not going to build a probe that's going to knock this asteroid out of the way? What if we were to build it ourselves? Well, we don't have the money. Let's not worry about that. Let's not worry about not having the money. Maybe, because for all we know, somewhere between here and there, somebody who's got money is going to say, you know what? I'm going to donate to this mission, and I'm going to get enough, and we'll have the money. So we can work it out. Like I said, Richard Branson, I have a clip. I'll probably make it into a short so we can circulate it and see if we can actually get Richard Branson to see it. Just saying, hey, Richard Branson, do you want to help a godless church do something pretty fucking amazing and beat Elon Musk at something? Help us launch this space probe. We'll buy the probe, and even better, we'll build it with your money if you got the money to spare, which he obviously does. $330 billion. I made probably. I think this is what actually caused the schism. Is I had made a joke and said, look, because the Mormon Church just a few months ago, literally on the day that the tariffs were supposed to go into place, for the purchased, not for the first time, purchased a farm for garbanzo beans, to grow garbanzo beans down in Australia, and they spent about $330 million on this farm in Australia. But if you don't know, the Mormon Church owns an organization called Agricultural Reserve Inc., which owns more American farmland than any organization that exists or individual. They own more American farmland than anyone. And but tariffs. So now, not surprisingly, perhaps, now that the trade war is on, they've decided to buy farmland in Australia. Australia did not retaliate on tariffs that were imposed on them. They kept their tariffs the same. They kept their levels the same, and decided instead that they were going to invest their taxpayers' money into a program helping Australian producers, Australian farmers, etc., to get better trade deals in every country but America. And that's pretty brilliant. You got to admit, these guys, it pays off to have people in power who know what the hell they're doing. And so, lo and behold, the Mormon Church has spent over $500 million buying farmland in Australia. And I made the joke that one of those was a garbanzo bean farm. And I don't know anything about garbanzo beans. That the only thing I know about garbanzo beans, I'm doing the joke again. So if there's more, let this schism grow. Fuck you all. As I said, the only thing I know about garbanzo beans is that the difference between a chickpea and a garbanzo bean is that Donald Trump never paid for garbanzo beans in Russia, on a bet in Russia. And I think that's actually what caused the schism. So make your exit great again, I guess. Make your exit great again, if that's what's going to happen. If you're going to leave over my making jokes about Donald Trump, you better leave now. Because it's going to get worse. I don't know how many of you saw this, but a couple weeks ago, the IRS basically told the world in a filing in court that yes, basically the Johnson Amendment says that churches have to lose their tax exempt status if they endorse candidates from the pulpit, but all the churches do it, so we don't enforce that rule. We just, it's the law, but we don't give a shit, basically. And so now I guess I can endorse political candidates. I don't have any political candidates I like, so fuck that. Instead, I'm gonna make jokes about Donald Trump. They're gonna get nasty and they're gonna get mean spirited, and that's just gonna be and if I get into trouble over that, that's what happens to me. But yeah, so the schism grows. But I wanted to end with this and tell you guys, we have a non-zero chance. And I love this idea that we could save the world, that we could send up this probe and save the world. And I say we just at least talk about it. We've got a couple of years before we can't move it. We can't move this asteroid enough to move its non-zero chance to a zero chance that it hits Earth. So let's at least talk about it. What would it actually look like? How would you do it? Because for all we know, once again, the future may hold that somebody who's got the money to make it happen is going to say, I'll give them the money. Go build that probe. Go launch it. We had Jules on the programs. She was talking about, that Virgin Galactic, their whole facility is down here in New Mexico. I didn't know that they have a launch pad and everything in New Mexico, I think. I was like, we might actually get Richard Branson to help us launch the space probe. Maybe we make a deal with him. It's like, you put up the money or help us get the money. We'll launch it. Well, I'll go to Elon Musk and ask him to put it on a Falcon Heavy. I don't care. I do care. I would hate that. Let's avoid that as much as possible. But screw it. We'll do what we have to do. Because the fact of the matter is, if we looked at the future as if we have a zero chance of success, we may be right, but it's not helping do anything. We have to remember that for all we know, it could happen. I mean, it could happen. The whole reason to think about 2024 YR4, which is a 3% chance of hitting Earth on December 22nd, 2032, is because it's got a non-zero chance. It could happen. And so I said then, and I'll say again, we have a non-zero chance. Amen.
From empty pews to reasoned thought, we'll defend our pale blue dot. If the danger's great, but the odds are small, we Corahors will heed the call. True saviors, but not from sin. We have no hope but what's within. We were not born to be heroes. Our chance is small, but never zero. Non-zero chance. Take to the sky against all odds. We will fly. Count us down. Our last advance. This is our